Nestled in the heart of suburbia, Maplewood Lane was a picture-perfect neighborhood that seemed straight out of a postcard. Tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, and charming houses adorned with vibrant flower beds created an inviting atmosphere. It was the kind of place where families thrived, children played freely in the yards, and neighbors waved hello as they passed by. The sense of community was palpable, drawing residents to this haven away from the hustle and bustle of city life. Central to maintaining this idyllic environment was the Homeowners Association, or HOA, which prided itself on upholding the neighborhood's charm and order. With strict rules governing everything from lawn care to holiday decorations, the HOA aimed to ensure that every home contributed to the overall aesthetic appeal. Initially, many residents appreciated this guidance, believing it would protect their investments and foster a sense of pride in their community. However, the HOA's authority soon became a double-edged sword. Among its self-appointed enforcers was Karen, a woman known for her meticulous adherence to rules and her knack for creating drama over minor infractions. She had a reputation for being overly critical, often wielding her power with a heavy hand. While she once embodied the neighborhood's spirit of vigilance, her behavior began to sour relationships among residents. What started as a charming community had slowly transformed into a battleground of grievances and complaints, setting the stage for a confrontation that would leave its mark on Maplewood Lane. As the holiday season approached, the protagonist eagerly anticipated the arrival of various packages filled with gifts and decorations. Each day brought the thrill of a delivery, but it quickly turned into a source of anxiety. Time and again, they found empty doorsteps where their parcels should have been, replaced by nothing but disappointment. It didn't take long for the neighborhood whispers to turn into a troubling reality. Karen, the HOA enforcer, had taken to snatching packages she deemed abandoned or unsightly. The sense of violation was palpable. The protagonist couldn't shake the feeling that their privacy had been invaded in an unexpected and deeply personal way. These weren't just parcels. They represented thoughtfulness and anticipation. Each missing package felt like a strike against their right to enjoy their home. Friends and family became frustrated too, as they watched deliveries vanish in a thin air, leaving the protagonist to explain yet another lost gift. With every stolen package, frustration morphed into anger. How could someone justify taking something that wasn't theirs? It was as if Karen believed she had the authority to dictate not only what belonged in the neighborhood, but also what belonged to each resident. The protagonist felt powerless under her watchful eye, turning a once peaceful home into a battleground against petty theft. As days turned into weeks, the anguish over lost deliveries escalated, culminating in a boiling point that would soon ignite an unexpected and outrageous response from the protagonist. Karen was the embodiment of an overzealous HOA enforcer, a woman whose love for rules bordered on obsession. With her perfectly coiffed hair and sharp business attire, she strode through the neighborhood with an air of authority, clipboard in hand, ready to make notes on any perceived infractions. It was as if she thrived on the power her position afforded her, relishing the opportunity to enforce the HOA's regulations with an iron fist. Her antics were legendary among the residents. Whether it was issuing fines for slightly overgrown grass or sending sternly worded letters about driveway clutter, Karen made it her mission to keep everyone in line. Neighbors often found themselves on the receiving end of her unsolicited advice, an unwelcome visit that usually began with a saccharine smile, but quickly turned into a lecture on compliance. The protagonist experienced this firsthand when Karen confronted them about their porch decorations, declaring them too festive and out of place, leaving them feeling belittled in their own home. Karen's heavy-handed tactics fostered resentment amongst the community. What once felt like a collaborative effort to maintain neighborhood aesthetics had morphed into a climate of fear and tension. Residents began to tiptoe around her, worried that even the slightest misstep would land them in her crosshairs. The protagonist, once excited to be part of Maplewood Lane, now felt trapped under Karen's watchful gaze, aware that every action was scrutinized. This constant pressure would soon push them toward a drastic decision, one that would turn the tables in a way they never imagined. The breaking point came on a chilly December afternoon, just as the sun began to dip below the horizon and cast a warm glow over Maplewood Lane. The protagonist had been eagerly awaiting a package that contained a special gift for their partner. something they had carefully selected after weeks of searching. But when they returned home, their hearts sank as they once again found an empty porch, devoid of any sign of delivery. Frustration washed over them like a tidal wave. This was the third package stolen in as many weeks, and enough was enough. As anger bubbled within, the protagonist replayed Karen's smirking face in their mind, the way she relished telling them that their package had been deemed abandoned because it had sat on the porch for too long. The feeling of powerlessness transformed into a simmering determination to take action. They spent the evening pacing their living room, contemplating revenge. The idea of simply confronting Karen felt insufficient. She thrived on confrontation and would likely dismiss any complaints as mere whining from an unsophisticated resident. It was then that inspiration struck, a mischievous thought that made them chuckle despite the frustration. Why not turn the tables? What if they could teach Karen a lesson in a way that was both humorous and harmless? With that thought, the stage was set for an outrageous prank, a plan to put a skunk in one of their packages. The idea was both absurd and deliciously enticing, igniting a spark of mischief that would propel them forward into uncharted territory. They knew it would be a bold move, but for the first time in weeks, they felt empowered to reclaim their space and sense of justice against the notorious HOA enforcer. The planning phase unfolded like a wild brainstorming session, with the protagonist pacing back and forth in their living room, fueled by a blend of frustration and creativity. They began jotting down ideas, tapping into their inner mischief maker. The initial thoughts ranged from harmless pranks to more elaborate schemes, each one more outrageous than the last. Could they simply leave a fake, abandoned package on their porch, marked with a note for Karen? Or perhaps a glitter bomb that would explode upon opening? But as they considered each option, the protagonist realized these ideas lacked the punch they were seeking. They needed something that would truly catch Karen off guard, something that would force her to confront her own absurd behavior. The more they thought about it, the more ridiculous ideas surfaced, like filling her mailbox with confetti or staging a neighborhood flash mob to sing songs about package theft. Yet none of these felt quite right. It was during a moment of exasperation that the outrageous thought struck. What if they put a skunk in a package? The idea was so wild it made them laugh out loud. A skunk. It was perfect, guaranteed chaos without causing any permanent harm. Just imagining Karen's reaction to an unexpected skunk encounter sent shivers of delight down their spine. With this newfound inspiration, the protagonist's excitement peaked. They began mapping out the logistics, how to safely acquire a skunk, how to prepare the package, and most importantly, how to execute the prank without being caught. As they scribbled notes and outlined their plan, they felt an exhilarating rush of empowerment, a sense that they could finally take control of the situation in a way that was both clever and satisfying. The stage was set for hilarity to ensue, and they couldn't wait to see how it would unfold. The quest to acquire a skunk quickly turned into a comedic adventure, filled with unexpected twists and turns. The protagonist enlisted the help of their best friend, Jake, whose love for wildlife and penchant for the absurd made him the perfect accomplice. The duo started by researching local exotic pet stores and wildlife rehabilitators, only to discover that acquiring a skunk was no simple task. Most shops were quick to inform them of the legalities involved, with one stern store owner even suggesting they consider a more conventional pet. Undeterred, they turned to social media, posting an outrageous plea for assistance in finding a skunk. The responses ranged from supportive to downright bewildered, with friends chiming in with suggestions that were as ridiculous as they were impractical, like trying to catch one in the wild or training their cat to act like a skunk. Eventually, after several days of searching and a few near misses with disapproving animal control officers, they found a local animal sanctuary that had recently rescued a skunk. The owner was surprisingly open-minded about their prank idea, but warned them about the skunk's natural defenses. "If it sprays, you'll need more than just soap and water," she chuckled, handing over a small crate containing the unsuspecting creature. As they loaded the crate into Jake's car, both friends erupted into laughter at the absurdity of the situation. The skunk sat calmly inside, seemingly unaware of its future role in their prank. They could hardly contain their excitement as they drove back home, exchanging jokes about what Karen would think if she knew they had just purchased a skunk. With spirits high and adrenaline pumping, They knew they were one step closer to executing their audacious plan, and chaos was just around the corner. The day of the prank dawned with an electrifying sense of anticipation that buzzed in the air. The protagonist woke up early, heart racing at the thought of what was about to unfold. They gathered the materials needed to prepare the package, a sturdy cardboard box, packing tape, and a few layers of bubble wrap to cushion their unexpected guest. The skunk, whom they affectionately named Stinky, seemed surprisingly calm in its crate, blissfully unaware of its role as the centerpiece of a grand scheme. With Jake by their side, they carefully placed Stinky inside the box, making sure he was comfortable and had enough breathing space. They added a few faux shipping labels with absurdly vague descriptions like fragile, handle with care, and live animal, do not open. The duo couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. After sealing the box, they positioned it on the front porch, ensuring it looked just like any regular delivery. As they took a step back to admire their handiwork, a thrill surged through them. The secrecy involved in executing this plan heightened the excitement. They had to be cautious not to draw attention from Karen or any nosy neighbors. Glancing around to ensure no one was watching, they hid behind a nearby bush, ready to witness the moment of truth. Minutes felt like hours as they anxiously awaited Karen's arrival. Every sound made them jump. Was that her car? Would she approach with her usual air of superiority? The anticipation was palpable, and both friends exchanged nervous glances filled with excitement and mischief. This was it. They were on the brink of turning the tables on their neighborhood nemesis. As the sun shone brightly overhead, they could hardly contain their glee at what was about to unfold. The moment of truth arrived with a rush of adrenaline that sent the protagonist's heart racing. From their hidden vantage point behind the bush, they could see Karen's familiar figure striding down the sidewalk, her brow furrowed in concentration. As she approached the porch, a mix of excitement and dread coursed through them. Would this finally be the moment that made her realize how her overbearing ways had affected the neighborhood? Karen picked up the package, her expression shifting from curiosity to annoyance as she examined the oversized box. The protagonist held their breath as she began inspecting the labels, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. The anticipation was almost unbearable. They exchanged anxious glances with Jake, both of them silently willing her to open it. Finally, with an exaggerated sigh, Karen ripped through the tape and pulled back the flaps of the box. For a heartbeat, everything felt suspended in time. Then, Stinky emerged, startled but unharmed, his little nose twitching in confusion. Karen's eyes widened in sheer disbelief as she stumbled back, her shriek echoing through the neighborhood. Chaos erupted. Stinky scampered out of the box and dashed around the porch while Karen flailed her arms in panic. The scene was pure mayhem. Neighbors peeked out from their windows and doorways to witness the spectacle unfold. The protagonist and Jake could barely contain their laughter, watching as Karen raced away from the skunk, her authority completely shattered in an instant. In that exhilarating moment, all the frustration and anxiety melted away, replaced by a sense of triumph. They had turned the tables on their nemesis in a way they would never forget. The thrill of seeing Karen's reaction was sweeter than any package they'd ever lost, igniting a wave of camaraderie among neighbors witnessing the hilarious chaos unfold. As the chaotic scene unfolded, the reactions from the neighborhood were as varied as the residents themselves. Initially, a few onlookers were taken aback, their expressions frozen in shock as they registered what was happening. Karen, the formidable enforcer of the HOA, was being outsmarted by a skunk, and it was a sight that none of them could have anticipated. Then, as laughter began to ripple through the crowd, it quickly turned into an uproarious chorus. Neighbors who had once tiptoed around Karen's watchful eye now found a shared sense of liberation. The sound of giggles mixed with gasps as they witnessed her frantic attempts to regain control, her authoritative demeanor shattered in an instant. "That's what you get for stealing packages," someone called out, igniting a wave of cheers and applause from those who had suffered under her reign. Many residents stepped onto their porches, some recording the mayhem on their phones while others leaned against railings, unable to contain their amusement. The protagonist and Jake peeked out from behind their hiding spot, barely containing their glee at the unexpected community response. What had begun as a personal vendetta had transformed into a neighborhood rebellion against Karen's overbearing antics. A sense of justice permeated the air. People exchanged knowing glances and smiles, reveling in the delicious irony of the situation. For once, the tables had turned, and Karen was experiencing her own brand of mischief. As Stinky continued to roam freely, drawing even more laughter from those watching, it became clear that this incident would be talked about for years to come, a legendary moment forever etched in the history of Maplewood Lane. In the days following the skunk incident, the atmosphere in Maplewood Lane was charged with a blend of excitement and tension. News of Karen's chaotic encounter spread like wildfire, igniting conversations at every corner. Yet, as the laughter faded, the reality of the prank's consequences began to sink in. Karen, humiliated and furious, wasted no time rallying support within the HOA. An emergency meeting was convened, where she passionately recounted her ordeal, painting herself as the victim of an outrageous act. The once unquestioned authority of the HOA now faced scrutiny from neighbors who had witnessed Karen's overreach firsthand. Many residents expressed their support for the protagonist, sharing their own grievances about Karen's behavior. This shift in community dynamics marked a significant turning point. No longer were neighbors intimidated by her antics. They were emboldened. However, not all reactions were positive. The protagonist found themselves at the center of controversy, facing potential repercussions from both the HOA and their neighbors. While many supported their prank as a form of poetic justice, others worried about the implications of introducing wildlife into the equation. Discussions swirled around fines or even expulsion from community events for disruptive behavior. The protagonist braced for backlash, uncertain how far Karen would go to reclaim her authority. Despite these challenges, there was a palpable sense of camaraderie among neighbors as they united against a common foe. The prank had sparked conversations about fairness and community spirit, encouraging residents to stand up against unreasonable enforcement. While the future remained uncertain for the protagonist, one thing was clear: they had ignited a spark of change within Maplewood Lane that would resonate long after the chaos subsided. In the aftermath of the skunk incident, the protagonist found themselves reflecting on the whirlwind of events. Sitting on their porch one evening, they watched neighbors gather for a community barbecue, laughter filling the air, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere that had once enveloped Maplewood Lane. The prank had sparked not only chaos, but also a newfound sense of unity among residents who had long felt oppressed by Karen's overbearing rule. As they considered the themes of justice and community spirit, the protagonist grappled with the fine line between revenge and humor. Initially driven by frustration and a desire to reclaim their autonomy, they realized that their actions had ignited a collective response. The prank was more than just a reaction to theft. It had become a catalyst for change, encouraging others to speak out against unreasonable behavior and fostering camaraderie in a neighborhood that had been fractured by fear. Yet, amidst the laughter and celebration, fleeting moments of doubt crept in. Would they do it again? As exhilarating as it had been to witness Karen's comeuppance, they also recognized that pranks could spiral out of control and lead to unintended consequences. They pondered whether humor could truly bridge the gap between neighborly disputes or if it risked further division. Ultimately, reflecting on the experience, the protagonist felt a mixture of pride and caution. They found solace in knowing that sometimes standing up for oneself could be both humorous and impactful. While they might not resort to such extreme measures again, they felt empowered to confront injustices in more constructive ways. The prank had taught them valuable lessons about community, resilience, and the enduring power of laughter in overcoming adversity. As the sun set over Maplewood Lane, casting a warm golden hue across the neighborhood, the protagonist couldn't help but smile at the sense of community that had blossomed in the wake of the skunk incident. The laughter and camaraderie that filled the air during neighborhood gatherings were palpable, a refreshing change from the tension that had once prevailed. Neighbors who had previously kept their heads down were now more willing to engage in lighthearted banter, sharing stories and laughter about their own run-ins with Karen. Though Karen remained a formidable presence, her reputation had shifted. Residents exchanged playful jabs about her newfound status as the Skunk Queen, and the protagonist often found themselves at the center of those conversations, reliving the hilarity of that unforgettable day. It was clear that the prank had not only brought them closer together, but also created a shared narrative that would be recounted for years to come. In moments of quiet reflection, the protagonist acknowledged that while their actions may have straddled the line between revenge and humor, they ultimately sparked joy and resilience within their community. They learned that sometimes, laughter is indeed the best response to absurdity. As they watched children play in yards and neighbors share stories over barbecues, it was evident that this newfound spirit would endure. With a wink and a nod, they embraced the ongoing rivalry with Karen, knowing that whatever she might attempt next would be met with unity and humor. After all, in a world filled with challenges, it's the shared laughter and light-hearted moments that truly bind a community together.